Jeff, welcome to this week's Clienting. How the heck are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Gee?
I'm great. It's
Love it.
another exciting week of local legal marketing conversations brought to you by Attorney Sync. I'm getting more handy with the StreamYard accoutrement, so we have a nice little ticker at the bottom.
Accoutrements. Love that word.
In any event, there it is.
Good stuff.
Well, I got something to talk about today.
Okay, lay it on me.
I am talking about my LinkedIn post. This came up. I see a lot of these Facebook ads, Instagram ads, as I'm sure you do too, as I'm sure people that follow along do as well. And recently I saw one that was something like, 1,000 motor vehicle accident cases delivered in 30 days with a, cost per case and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's really interesting because sometimes like they're not couched in terms of like what the actual total addressable market is or the service addressable market. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that and
Yeah.
answer any questions about this. So the first thing is this, look, and we'll keep it. I'll try to keep it short here, but we'll keep it specific to motor vehicle accidents. Most states, governmental units, counties have some kind of traffic crash reporting data.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that capture every single car accident? No, but most car accidents that require, there's a police report, there's some kind of damage or injury, they're going to be captured by that. So you can go look and you can go look at a map of total crashes in a particular county or in a state or in a city or whatever kind of addressable market you want to look at. And there's only so many. It's not an infinite number. And so then, and look, I'll say this too, because people that might be following along might be like, well, a car accident could happen somewhere else. And then the proper venue could be in a different place and that kind of stuff. And like, sure, it's not a one for one. But what I'm really trying to call out here is that when someone's talking about sending you thousands of motor vehicle accident cases and you go and look at the area that you actually service, and there were only 100 car crashes total. And we know that not every car crash is a case. Certainly not every car crash is a case that your firm's actually going to open a file on.
Right.
And I think that if you see those ads or if you're exploring these, lead generation companies, or even you're having a conversation with an agency, or, you're an in-house person and you're talking with your marketing team, or you're a law firm owner and leader and you're talking to your CMO, you're talking to your marketing director, I think it's worthwhile to have a conversation about like, look, what is the total number of these types of cases that are available in our market?
Mm-hmm.
And what percentage of those is actually realistic for us to actually put messaging in front of and actually win? Because again, you're not going to win 100% of your total addressable market. You're not going to win 100% of your service addressable market. You're only going to win some percentage of those totals. And I think that you should be validating that when you're talking about building a marketing plan and you're talking about how you're going to deploy resources. Because if your plan's built on something that doesn't exist, you're not going to hit those numbers.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. I love that article. Let's take one step back just to make sure everybody's on the same page with us. You talked about total addressable market, or TAM. SAM is mentioned, all those acronyms. For someone that hasn't heard those terms before, can you just walk through them just so that we're on the same page with that, and why PI firm might care about that framework? Just kind of start there, and then we can go on.
No, you have to call us and have a consultation in order for me to tell you the answer to those questions. No, seriously, let me see here. I was going to pull I thought it was only fair to go back to the link to the post, which of course
pull up the post.
I've lost here. I was going to try to share that, but now of course I can't quite find it, which happens when you're doing a live show and you have a bunch of other tabs open.
I'm gonna help you out.
There it is. I found it.
Okay.
All right. So this, I pulled this, honestly. I think I pulled this from American Marketing Association. If you go search for these terms, you can go get definitions. But the way that we thought about it was this: TAM, TAM, total addressable market. And in my case, I was using data from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration to benchmark total fatalities from car crashes in a given time frame. And you can look at this certainly nationally, state levels, but depending on what your where your firm is, your TAM might overlap state boundaries, right? If you're on a border of a state, you might say, my total addressable market is all fatal car crashes in these 3 states, or maybe it's 1 state, or maybe you're in a place where you're like, realistically, we're only going to the addressable market for us is literally our county. But that's the total number of, in this context,
it's the whole pie. Yeah,
it's the whole pie. Next up is SAM. So SAM I defined as the subset of TAM that you can actually serve. So total addressable market, if you're looking at like nationwide, if you're not licensed to practice in these other states, those states are not, those are not part of your service available market. And then the SOM is service obtainable market. And that I defined as the share of your SAM. So the percent of the total service available market that's realistic for you to achieve. And so, and this is where the rubber really meets the road, because even if you're, depending on where you are in your growth journey and what kind of investments you're deploying to reach your service available market, if you're just doing, we'll take the obvious one, do great work, clients are going to sing your praises. I'm not spending a single dollar on marketing. Well, your service obtainable market is going to be smaller than somebody who is saturation, every billboard, every radio spot, massive digital campaigns.
Right.
That's a totally different obtainable market. And so trying to figure out what your percentage of that is. The other thing that this is useful for, though, is you can go back and look at your historical numbers, because people say, well, how do I know what my service obtainable market is right now? And be like, well, what has it been for the last 3 years? You can backfill available. You can backfill total addressable and service available, and then be like, well, how many cases did you open? Because your numbers are in there, and that should be a level set. And so then I would say, all right, look, we want to incrementally grow our service obtainable market by X%. And here's the plan to do that. That's the way to kind of shape those conversations, to say, here's all available. Here's what's a service addressable. And here's what's realistic for us to obtain based on the investment and the growth strategy that we're putting forth.
It's like the number of people. Do you think of obtainable in terms of like the number of people you could possibly have an opportunity with?
That would be service available.
Okay.
Service available is of all the people that are in a car crash, how many of them and are in our service area? That's the total of those. The obtainable is what percentage of those that we could potentially deliver service to is realistic for us to actually win. Because again, it's not all of them. You even the ones that you actually get people that actually inquire, right? We see this in CRMs all the time. They hired another lawyer. And so that was someone that was in your target addressable. They were in your service available and very deep into your pipeline of service attainable, and you still didn't win them. And so it's going to be some percentage of that total service available market that you're actually able to win. But I think that directionally, it's a good guidepost for showing you where you are in the competitive mix. And you might say, look, if we get 1% of our service available market, business is good. We're hitting growth objectives, and this is the plan we're going to do that. If you're a firm that's trying to, you're a dominant player already and you're trying to get those incremental obtainable cases, you're going to have to deploy more resources to win those cases.
I bet you a lot of firms have no idea what that number is for them. Do you have Do you have even a starting point you could talk about in terms of how they can calculate that?
Well, and I kind of joked around in the post that wouldn't it be nice if, because the real place to look at this stuff would be if you had perfect information, you would have all of the legal situations that give rise to a lawsuit that you might help with. But that's, because people think, well, court filings. It's like, well, that's a segment of it, but not all of these cases actually even get to court, right? A lot of them are settled before you even get to court. But I think, depending on the car accident ones is the one that there actually is data for. There's probably some other places you can go, but I'd be going to government research sites. I'd be going to industry data sites. I mean, I'm sure that there are organizations that put out reports on divorce. I'm sure there are organizations that put out reports on crimes and arrests and stuff like that in the criminal context. In PI, especially if we think about motor vehicle, well, that's the one that we tend to think about to directionally set this.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about how you were thinking about it with regards to get back, now that we've kind of defined those things, talk about a little bit in the context of some of the lead providers, at least the point that you were making in the LinkedIn post for people that might not have seen that.
Well, and I will wish a good afternoon to Podiatry Growth. Thanks for joining us today and for the comment. Yeah. So my point is this. Here's the easy benchmark. They're going to send you 10,000 MVA leads over the next 30 days. And again, if that doesn't strike you as like problematic there, go look up how many car accidents were in your target addressable market or in your service available market and see if it's even close, because this is what happens with those. Well, we were using, our system-wide, nationwide data for our ad, right? And in fact, I even wrote one today, and someone was kind of, trying to be a judicious reader of the ad copy. And they said something about like a certain number of open cases in SEO over 30 days. And the person was like, well, yeah, sure. If this is a national law firm that's generating this many cases from a referral or, quote unquote brand campaign, well, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not, the implication is that they're generating these cases for, to fill top of funnel for people that don't know you already, or bottom of the funnel, direct response in organic. And like, that's not realistic because there's not even that many cases available.
Right.
That was the point of that, at least.
Yeah. That's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. I didn't really have anything more than that. I just think it's a good, there's some good tools at marketers' disposals to be able to say, is this even benchmarked in anything close to realistic data?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's good to get a sense of some of the data for you locally when you pull this in to get the sense, like you were making that point.
Yeah, counties, most of the counties have it, I'm thinking about in Michigan, but like, Michigan State Police report on this. Some states are, a little cagey about trying to access the data. Some of them require Freedom of Information Act requests, some of them, but the data, at least in the car crash instance, a lot of that stuff's available. And I think it's a good starting point to at least directionally think about it. Again, am I trying to do a 1-for-1 and saying like this many car accidents, this is how many we're going to get? No. But if you're not even, if you're going to go outlay money to hit a new case acquisition goal, and there's not even that many total car crashes.
Right. What's the opportunity?
Your plans are all fake.
Look good on the spreadsheet, though.
Looks great in the spread. Looks great in the ad. Looks great in the Facebook ad.
Cool. One of the other kind of changing topics a little bit, but you had another post that super fascinating. It was Anthropic had put out sort of the estimated capabilities of what AI can do right now in some different areas, professional areas. And another part of the chart that was showing exactly how much it's actually taking over right now in that gap. And you highlighted a little bit specifically with legal being one of the biggest gaps between what AI can theoretically do now and what people are actually using it for. So I guess my first question is like, why do you think adoption's lagging so far behind the capability in legal right now?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that this is a report generated by Anthropic, which is a company that sells AI. And so this isn't an independent research. This isn't independent analysis or benchmarking. This is Anthropic's
Right. Own.
publication. So not surprisingly, they're like, yeah, yeah, I can do everything. But if we look at these, let's look at the specific chart that I posted, and this has been floating around the internet. I'm sure you've probably seen it, like a lot of other folks. And then it's specifically along the axis for legal, right? And the blue is the theoretical AI coverage. So that's like what Anthropic thinks like out of all the legal work to do, that's how much Anthropic could do. And I think that's another point to make is like, this isn't AI wide. This isn't including like all the other AI platforms out there. This is just
Mhm.
Anthropic saying this is Anthropic's theoretical AI coverage. And then the red is the observed AI coverage. And I think that that's based on their own
Like
use.
internal. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if you take it for what they're saying, theoretically they believe that that Claude can do a lot of most of the overwhelming majority of the legal work. What's is that 80%, something like 80 some percent of all legal work,
Yeah.
and they're currently doing what's that 10% maybe. I'm looking at this point 0.4. I don't know what these lines are, so maybe 0.2, so maybe 20%. And so you asked, well, why is there such a big gap between what is being used today and what's theoretically possible? Um, so what are the big obstacles to deploying, AI? The most obvious one is still reliability. I mean, we
Right.
still, we say that, and people will laugh and roll their eyes and be like, "Oh, it's getting better" and all this kind of stuff. But you're still, and I think we've really moved, even though it's been such a short period of time. We've really moved from the period of like, should I be using AI, at least in my opinion, to how we use
How?
it. And how
I
we
agree.
use it is not all the same, right? And we talk about this internally all the time, even in the
Yep.
marketing context. Like, and people have misunderstood me because I've been critical, especially of a lot of the of our worthy rivals and other marketing people and marketing companies who uh, seemingly are implying that yes, we use it, and it's basically copy and paste.
Right. Push a
You know,
button and it just does everything.
push a button and you've got blog posts. Push a
Yep.
button and you've got LinkedIn posts. Push a button and you've analyzed your firm's
Yeah.
marketing data, which
Just
that's
one
always a
shot your
fun
whole
one.
strategy and it's perfect.
Right. And so anyway, point being is that, so trying to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think there's a lot of the reluctance. They're like, look, we're seeing these hallucinations, we're seeing hallucinated cases. Um, but it's obvious to me there's all sorts of stuff that it does and does at least as well as a person, and in many contexts better. And that the other thing that I always think about in this comparison, which I think it's to a large extent a false dichotomy too, and the cliche or meme or whatever we're calling it these days is that it's actually the lawyers who use AI that are going to replace the lawyers who don't.
Yeah. That was part of my
Um,
next question here. Yeah.
well, and we think about that the same thing in the marketing agency context, right? Like it's the marketers that use AI that will replace the marketers that don't, but not all usage is equal.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of tasks within legal that I think that there's a reluctance to turn it fully over to the AI to do. But if you ask me, like, do I expect that the gap between the red and blue to close over the next couple of years? Like, absolutely.
For sure. Do you think
And
it's
and
an
I think it's true
imperative?
in
You think it's an imperative to close that gap for a firm to survive?
well, that's a big blanket question because not all firms are built the same way. I
Yeah.
think when I think of some of the stuff that's going on in big law, like when you have these like a junior associate that does a lot of research, maybe they do initial document drafting, probably a bunch of other things that I'm not thinking about. I think the AI is going to win that fight. And so if you're like, is it an imperative for big law firms to be retooling in a way where that we'll call it the rote production work, like the entry level base production work in legal is done by technology? I don't know if it's a survival imperative, but it's certainly a huge competitive disadvantage if you're carrying all of this extra comp expense that the firm down the street's not. And really, and we talk about this in other contexts as well, especially in the the idea of the death of the billable hour. But once those firms and clients, because by the way, don't forget, there are CTOs at companies that they're trying to build this stuff in house as well. There are legal teams in house that they're like, hey, wait, maybe we hire outside counsel for these specific, highly strategic, highly, they're complex and they require a lot of expertise, and the data that we have that's feeding the AI is not that good on them. And so we still want that human lawyer at the end of the day. But internally, we're like, we're not going to turn that legal work over to some of those firms that we used to. And so for those types of firms where just kind of break it down into terms of like total fees generated, just to simplify for this conversation on LinkedIn, if you're like 80% of our fees are generated from that low rope production work, it probably is an existential imperative to do it. If you're a litigation firm, like you're a local litigation law firm, I'm like, nah. I mean, you might squeeze some extra out of it. I think there's some efficiency to be had. I think it allows you to double down on the human aspects of, developing more deep connections in your local community, developing deeper connections with your clients. The human service delivery side of legal work, I think it opens up opportunities for that. Is it an existential imperative to be turning over 80% of your rope production work to AI today? I don't know. And I would also be like, remember this too, there were some lawyers talking about this, but the cost to deploy these technologies is not zero.
No, it's not. That's a good point.
Some of the examples I've seen, it's more expensive than it is hiring a handful of, whether it's case managers, paralegals, or junior associates. And so
totally, especially if you get deeper into like the co-work and the Claude Code and some of those setups, right? And those things going out and the API usage, it gets as expensive as a, full-time human. And it's, very Rube Goldberg built at this point anyways.
Well, and imagine, let's assume that you're not even sophisticated enough to like build your own using one of the major players. Let's say you're going to buy some legal tech. That's a legal tech specific thing to do this. It's not cheap.
No. So, it's interesting.
These are some of the things that people face. And, look, we face it all the time too. I mean, right. We talk about this all the time, and I don't know, his marketing's not on here, but I guess maybe sales is part of this, and where else would we fall? I haven't really thought about this particular chart in terms of what we do. But there's a large amount of the same sentiment on, I can just have this AI tool do all of my marketing for me. And again, not saying that AI doesn't play a role, but the ones that's literally like hook my ChatGPT API up to my LinkedIn API and post for me, like it doesn't go well.
No. And there's no real moat there anyways. Everybody's got access to this,
Exactly.
One of the things that you put in that article that I thought was interesting, you talked about, you could imagine like a pro se client showing up in court with earbuds and AI. What does that actually mean for like a PI lawyer, right? Like, do you think that changes the competitive landscape, or is it just a different universe from injury work? I don't know. That was very Black Mirror. That felt very, very interesting.
Well, it's funny because it's just happened. Maybe not as Black Mirror as I was portraying it, but I just saw a glance at this, and so I don't have all the details. Obviously, live shows, I'm not going to go research it now. But short version is that somebody's suing ChatGPT for basically UPL, unauthorized practice of law, saying that ChatGPT served as I think it was a pro se litigant that submitted stuff from ChatGPT to the court, and so
just made stuff up, right, or something to that extent.
I don't even know if this is a hallucination case, but they weren't even arguing about the veracity of what ChatGPT produced. They were like, ChatGPT is impersonating a lawyer. And I know, and I also posted this because it's been interesting, and it would be really interesting to me to see how the regulatory framework of this evolves, if it does at all. But New York, someone put forth a bill to essentially ban any AI product from impersonating a lawyer.
Hmm.
And then you get into like, well, what's impersonation of a lawyer? And I tongue in cheek posted like, well, as long as I disclaim that I'm not a lawyer, can I still give you my response to your prompt? But anyway, this came up at ClioCon last year, and all the powers that be there told me that no, Clio's vision is always to support lawyers, not to go to direct to consumer. But I just keep coming back to the same thing where I'm just like, if you've got 80%, 90% of the way there, and especially for some of these basic, repeatable, highly reliable parts of the representation.
Yep.
And then you're a pro se litigant, and you're like, all right, I can sign up for, we'll call it, AI lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
They can't call it AI lawyer though, because it'll be a UPL problem, but whatever. Throw my earbud in.
Yeah.
And I can write a complaint, and I can start drafting, interrogatories, and start doing depositions and get into court. Like, and again, as a consumer, I might be like, well, look, that seems still, even as seamless as it is, it seems like, I didn't go to law school. I'm still not making that connection. I mean, look, we know that there are some pro se litigants that are even willing to do that minus any kind of technology. It's certainly, there will be some. And then the choice will be, is it worth paying a lawyer 1/3 of my recovery for them to handle it? Or do I think like I can handle this? And look, I think for like, I think about traffic tickets, which there's already been examples of this, but like a traffic ticket, like, might I go in there and try to fight my traffic ticket with a earbud in? Yes.
Yeah. Right.
I got someone in my family that died from a truck collision. Am I going to take that on and try to try that case or negotiate it?
No,
not now. But you're like, if our reliability and trust in these tools starts to evolve, is there a world where I could see that? Like, there is. There really is. Now, is that happening today? Is it happening to the lion's share of cases today? No. Could I see that over the next 5-10 years? I could, but maybe I'm a little bit too Ray Kurzweily. And then you think about it in a lot of and then you think about the access to justice problem, and you're like, well, obviously there are so many people right now that would love to have an earbud with AI to help them deal with like their landlord-tenant dispute or all these other access issues that frankly the legal market is not satisfying, either because there's just not they can't see a way to unlock the commercial value from it. That people can't afford the fees that these firms are built around to be able to deliver that service. And so there's no question that that's coming if it's not already happening right now, which I think it's already happening. I think we're here. I think it's in red.
Do you think it'll be, but do you think it'll be gated regulatory and otherwise the same way, like the technology's here for self-driving cars, right? But and it's been for a while, but it's not there on a society, on a cultural level yet, right? Something tells me that there's aspects of legal that are going to at least block for a while in that same way. I don't know if you share that or if it's like you.
Well, look, that's exactly what the New York State Assembly is already proposing as an all-out ban. Like, you can't use it, and then you're like, well, in fairness, maybe it doesn't come out as a ban. Maybe there's guardrails, which I think guardrails is a great idea. Mm-hmm. Most of the rules of professional conduct they're consumer protection statutes in order to protect clients from being swindled by unscrupulous lawyers. Right. And I think that some kind of regulation that's like that for technology is generally a good thing. But to answer your question, like, yeah, there's going to be massive pushback. I think, and especially when the guild actually wakes up to what's going on. Again, it's funny, we laugh about this. We talk about like private equity coming into legal and MSOs, mm-hmm. and like what does, and we've been, the profession has been discussing what actually is law practice versus not law practice for so far as back as I can remember.
Yeah.
But yes, there's no question that when they catch on to when the majority of the legal profession starts really catching on to this, of course they're going to turn to protectionism. That's always that's what the guild has always done.
Always. Exactly. You can see it play out. You'll see how long that holds for. But I do agree with you. It'll start chipping away at the edges of the smaller stuff first, right? Because they'll just go around it. But yeah, traffic tickets, the things that, it's not a med mal case, but yes, like that's where it'll start. Um, it's going to be interesting to see that tug of war go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I think we're already seeing a lot. I mean, a lot of the firms, they're already starting to do this, right? We hear the stories of firms that, we'll talk about the PI firms, historical context, maybe a lawyer was handling 100, 200 cases. Now they're talking about handling 800, 1,000 cases per lawyer with the help of AI. I still don't think it's an apples to apples. I don't care how good your AI is. You are not delivering remarkable client experience to
Right.
1,000 open clients
Right.
as one human being. 1,000?
Yeah. There's
I mean, even just some napkin math. If let's say you work 2,000, whatever it is, what's the number people use? 2,040, 2,080 hours a year or something.
Yeah.
You can spend 2 hours.
2 hours for the year
per client for the year.
Now they probably say some chunk or percent of those are very low touch, right? Like you're not doing much on that.
I'm just talking about just the touch. I'm talking about purely the touch. You got 2 hours of actual touch.
Yeah, it's nothing, or at least it's not coming. It's not going to come from you.
You're certainly not taking people to lunch. Lunch takes longer than an hour. We can do one lunch per year.
Yeah, one lunch per year. What a great positioning.
That's unreasonable hospitality right there.
Good call out.
Yeah. What else we got? What have you been talking about recently in local legal marketing?
Local legal. Trying to think.
Sorry, you spent some time thinking. I can't get around. ABA Tech Show's coming up. I'm going to be there. I know you've got a conflict. Lunch Hour Legal Marketing is going to be there.
Yep.
I'm speaking on the topic of. I reduced it to this very, I don't know, smart Alec way of saying it, but how do I rank in LLMs is what I'm talking about. So
rank in LLMs.
Rank in LLMs. I publish. If you're a member of the ABA Law Practice Division, you should have access to this article, AI-powered search visibility for law firms. That was my the literal title of the article that's in Law Practice Division magazine. So grateful to the Law Practice Division for inviting me to write on that. But that'll be at the towards the end of March. And so if you're in Chicago at Tech Show and you want to talk about this stuff, come to the session. We're also doing live recordings at the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing booth. Conrad and I will be there doing interviews, and we've got conversational topics. But look, we still you hear it every day. We see the ads for it every day. We know a lot of our worthy rivals talk about it. And funny, when we do our initial preps for these conversations, it always comes up. Like everybody wants to talk about this AI stuff.
They do.
And it's just funny because what people are talking about, it's like largely all wrong. It's like, and I keep coming back to this idea of like, it's the single largest technological revolution and also the biggest hype cycle, both at the same time.
Both at the same time. 100%. Yeah. I get this all the time too. And, it's always a balance of like, the genuine curiosity and they see it coming versus how much of the market's just getting so pounded by agencies and marketing of FOMO. And if you're not doing this right now, you're dead in the water and that kind of stuff. So, probably a balance of both, but, there's just so much. Look, agencies always are peddling snake oil, but there is so much misinformation out there about AIs and ranking and intersecting with SEO. It's one of those things where really you got to do some research and get some education before going into these things, so you're not just getting sold a bill of goods with this stuff. But it's a real problem.
This is why everybody hates us, Jeff.
I know. Not us, just everybody else.
Well, we get guilt by association, right?
Guilt by association.
So. What else you got? Anything else? We're about 30 minutes into this edition of Clienting. We could wrap it up here unless you've got other things. And if you are joining us, please do join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And again, we're just getting started on these. I think this is our, I don't know, fifth one that we've done, maybe.
You say fourth, maybe fourth one,
fourth or fifth.
Um,
We'd love to hear from you, and we'd
Yes.
rather these be conversations with you than just with Jeff and I. And we need to do a better job of amplifying voices that we think are getting good messages out about local.
Yeah. What
marketing.
questions do you have? What can we talk about here that will add value and be informative for you?
Exactly. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that. Until next time, Jeff and Guy for clienting, and have a great rest of your day, Jeff.
Yeah, you too, Guy.